What is up, Lost Tribe? Welcome to this Boston edition of Pass the Rock, as we have Jesse in his traditional Patriots gear, and then I'm celebrating a little St. Patrick's Day with the Larry Bird jersey. How's everybody doing? Jesse, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody as well. Happy birthday to Matthew Shaw, one of our team members. I obviously had to come with the Patriots gear today after we signed like half the NFL this week. And we're going to dive into the NFL free agency recap, a crazy week in football as well. We're going to be talking about some March Madness today and the NBA. A lot of things have shifted in the West and the East, so we're going to be covering all that. But we're going to start off with our NFL free agency recap, and we're going to start off with none other than my New England Patriots. Do we think that maybe the Patriots are spending big because they're afraid that they might lose Bill Belichick if they waste another one of his final years? I mean, greatest coach of all time. You'll do anything to keep him around, even if it means spending a couple $100 million on tight ends.
What were they using that money for last year? Or did they just, like, it all came off the books? It was amazing to see one after another. They were signing multiple tight ends. I mean, just doing whatever they can. Obviously, my interesting question in my mind is, was it Belichick's call with Cam Newton? Like, did he really want him back? Did he not see another avenue at quarterback? That was the only one that I was like, wasn't totally expecting.
I mean, we saw some other quarterback free agency signings this week. Andy Dalton, Ryan Fitzpatrick going to Washington, Jameis Winston staying in your hometown, New Orleans. So it doesn't seem like there was a ton on the market. We heard earlier today that the Bears offered 3 first-round picks, a third-rounder, and 2 starters for Russell Wilson, and it still wasn't enough. So Cam Newton, I think he had a rough year because of his shoulder, but I'm hoping that maybe with some new weapons on offense, we got Nelson Aguilar, who's, we used to be made fun of for dropping a bunch of catches. But I'm really excited about Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith, working out of multiple tight end sets. So I'm excited for that. Go back to Patriot football, work in the middle of the field, get the run game going. I'm excited for it. I'm excited for the Patriots this year. If you weren't with us when we were 7-9, don't come crawling back when we're 9-8. Okay.
9-8. Oh, that's right. We get an extra game next year.
Aaron Sugar says 8-8. We're going 9-8. Okay, you heard it here first.
Yeah, no, the NFL they're going to play 17 games supposedly next year, so they could go 9-8. I hope that happens for you. That'll be a great mediocre season to deal with. No, I think the Cam Newton signing is just like, it's better to be with the guy that's been in the building than try to bring somebody else new in. There wasn't any like unbelievably great talent on the free agency wire. There's a ton of quarterbacks. I saw today predictions of 4 quarterbacks going in the top 6 in the draft. So you're going to have a lot of turnover there. But yeah, I think what they did was say, Cam Newton, we'd like you back. And now here's at least 4 new receivers, if you count the 2 tight ends, the 2 receivers that they signed. So a lot more there. He has to start throwing the ball with accuracy, which has been quite a long time since that's happened for Cam Newton. But really excited to see how that ends up.
And yeah, King Shui, we got an extra week in football coming this year. They're testing it out. We're going to have another week. So 17 games in 18 weeks to give that one more game. So hopefully nobody gets in the playoffs at 500 anymore. I'm looking at you, NFC East. So we got a lot to go over. So the biggest free agency signings, obviously the biggest one of all of free agency so far, Trent Williams signing 6 years, $138 million, becomes the highest paid offensive tackle in football, and he deserves it. He was the highest graded offensive tackle in football as well. Really big for the 49ers as they're run heavy. What do you think of this signing?
Oh, I mean, the 49ers also signed Alex Mack off of the Falcons. So I think that running game, if you have Raheem Mostert on your fantasy team and it's a keeper league, that's going to be unbelievable for them. I'm really excited about that. Not excited about playing against them in the NFC, but, the 49ers still have the issue of who's their quarterback. So, they have to figure that out. But you got to love that signing. It was a no-brainer. They knew they were going to have to break the bank, and they did.
And they did. And hey, if you're one of the 18 people watching right now, shout out to you all, and you want us to go over your team's biggest free agency signing, throw it in the chat, and we'll be sure to talk about it. I already got some requests to talk about the Giants, who just got John Ross. So they're adding to their receiving core. And they re-signed Leonard Williams, who had a great week. So watch out, NFC East. I mean, there's not exactly a ton of competition as well. Washington making some moves. Ryan Fitzpatrick, they had Taylor Heineke, who showed out against the Buccaneers. He had a pretty good game. but I don't think that they're ready to just trust one quarterback after going through like 4 this past season. So I like the addition of Ryan Fitzpatrick, get some veteran presence. He could be a mentor to Taylor Heineke, maybe start a few games for them, and maybe then hand over the reins. So I like this signing. What do you think, Ryan Fitzpatrick being on like his 11th team?
You got to love Fitzmagic. He's never been a Saint. I don't think he's been a Patriot either. So, we haven't been able to really experience that for our home teams. But great signing for them. I wouldn't be shocked if they drafted a quarterback. Maybe not in the first round, but somewhere. Because obviously Fitzmagic isn't going to last forever, or is he? I mean, how long has he been going? So I'm excited about that for them. I think it puts them solidly in play in the NFC East, because what else is there? I wouldn't be shocked if the Cowboys ran away with it a little bit because of the fact of getting Dak back. But you don't know how he's going to come back and play with that gruesome injury that he had. So I love what Washington is doing, and the NFC East is a toss-up, and I think you're right. 9-8 or 8-9 could win the division again.
And speaking of injuries and Washington, B. Evans here in the chat says that 6 years is very big for an offensive lineman, Trent Williams, who hasn't played a full season since 2013. I mean, he was on the Washington football team, and I agree. I mean, we saw 2 of the best offensive tackles or offensive linemen on the Chiefs go down with injuries. We saw David Bakhtiari on the Packers go down with an injury. I mean, 6 years is definitely a long-term deal for a guy who's already been in the NFL for like 7 or 8 seasons. So hopefully they're just hoping that he plays the rest of their career in San Fran, and they're locking that down. But that is a long contract, and it's definitely a bit of a longer term than anything else we've seen. We've only really seen 3-4-year deals being signed among other players in that position.
Well, and I think what you're going to find in the Saints just cut like $80 million off of their cap number, because they got people with these huge contracts to be able to renegotiate, put them into bonuses so that it counts less against the cap. I think obviously it's huge to get this contract. He's probably, I haven't looked at the guaranteed money. It's probably a ton, but number one is that 4 years from now, 3 years from now, he'll renegotiate, take some of that more of that money up front. And it's a great contract for the 49ers to move and maneuver.
And the Chiefs actually did some of that too. I saw Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce both restructured their contracts to kind of add to their O-line, which was the Chiefs Kingdom's biggest worry for this season. They got Joe Thuney off the Patriots for 5 years, $80 million. So not a small contract. So they're definitely adding some big force to that offensive line after Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher left. Some other news. This I thought was pretty funny. So we saw the Patriots spending a lot of money. The Jaguars also signed like 6 people today and yesterday, like really getting a lot of weapons. They got Philip Dorsett, expatriate, Marvin Jones Jr. from the Lions, and they got Carlos Hyde as well. Fun fact, since 2011, no other team has spent more money on free agents than the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I would love to hear who you think those names might be, because most of the good players, Jalen Ramsey, Allen Robinson, Leonard Fournette, they drafted. But right. What big free agents for the Jaguars come to mind? And keep in mind, they have the worst record since 2011 and have spent the most money on free agents.
Well, what's his name? The quarterback from the Eagles that played for the Bears last year. He was the big one. Nick Foles, thank you.
Yeah, 88 million. 88 million they paid Nick Foles after he won the Super Bowl.
And he played literally a quarter and a half for them.
Yep.
And then got hurt, and then came back and played a little bit, and then got traded. So that would be my number one. I'm trying to think. No, because how many players have they lost? Like they lost Ramsey to the Rams. When they traded him away, they have drafted really well, traded a bunch of people, and then thrown a bunch of money. I can't think of another free agent.
Chris Ivory, if you remember, running back.
Yeah, former.
They paid him $32 million to do absolutely nothing. So, and then some other guys, Zane Beatles, offensive lineman. Nice. I don't know if you remember him.
Nope.
Definitely throwing a lot of money down the toilet. Yeah, Allen Robinson was on the Jaguars, but they drafted him. They did not sign him as a free agent, and then he ended up leaving. And
they also signed there was a tight end that came from Denver.
Yes, Julius Thomas.
Yeah, Julius Thomas.
He was a big signing too. They wasted a bunch of money there. So I just thought that was a fun fact that they've spent the most in the last 10 years and have the worst record in that time. Surprisingly, not the Cleveland Browns.
Right. Good job, Brownies.
As well, we saw today the Cardinals picked up AJ Green from the Bengals, adding another pretty good wide receiver to their core. Do you think AJ Green's a Hall of Famer? And let us know in the chat if you think AJ Green is a Hall of Famer.
I definitely think, I don't think they've won enough for him to be a Hall of Famer yet. And I know that's more pinned to quarterbacks than it is to receivers, but I actually love that signing. I was kind of hoping the Saints would sign him as a second wideout. Now, the problem with him on the Saints is that he and Michael Thomas have very similar games. Neither of them is a speed guy. But I really like that, offsetting DeAndre Hopkins. And you still got Larry Fitzgerald there. So, that's a great top three for a quarterback that's still improving, still working on accuracy. And those guys, somebody's going to be open.
Yeah, and you got Christian Kirk as well. Hoping Larry Fitz doesn't call it after his 17th season. He's still yet to really publicly announce whether he's staying or going. Yeah. But if he does come back, that's a really good receiving core to have around Kyler Murray. And I would not be surprised. The Cardinals were almost there, but maybe getting J.J. Watt, adding A.J. Green, a little more development as a team. Like, it was their first year with Hopkins there, only Kyler Murray's second year in the league. I could see the Cardinals definitely being that force that they were a few years ago in the NFC.
Yeah, it's and I don't think he retires because of the fact of what they've gotten this offseason. It's almost like they're selling it to him. Let's make one more run at this thing. Seattle's, I wouldn't say in shambles, but, the Russell Wilson thing is tough to deal with. Plus, they haven't signed any offensive linemen. So how is it going to be easier for them? Now, the Rams will be an interesting case like we talked about a few weeks ago. You got Stafford in there. And then, I'm still holding out hope that they're the ones to sign Golladay just to make my prediction true. He's still on the market, so we don't know. And then the 49ers, they have quarterback issues, so we'll see. So I actually like what Arizona's doing, putting themselves in position. If J.J. Watt can stay healthy and they can get some push up front, that's a tough team to deal with.
Yeah, I'm excited to see where Kenny Golladay ends up. He seems to be one of the biggest names left available. The Packers re-signed Aaron Jones, but they let Jamal Williams go to the Lions. We saw some other receivers moving around. Corey Davis of the Titans went to the Jets for 3 years. We also saw Emmanuel Sanders go to the Bills today. So kind of a lot moving around. I would love to see Kenny Golladay in a Raiders uniform. I just am picturing him and Darren Waller and just finally getting Derek Carr some serious weapons, as well as Henry Ruggs on that team. So I'm excited to see what the Raiders do. They also got Yannick Ngakoue, also an ex-Jaguar. A lot of talent on the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are no longer Jaguars. And then, of course, just to wrap a few things up before we head on to our next section, a couple big names. The Niners also got Samson Ebukam. I'm sure some of you remember him from that great Monday night battle with the Chiefs and the Rams, where he scored 2 touchdowns in that game. As well, the Titans got Bud Dupree and Janoris Jenkins, kind of adding to their defense after they got rid of Malcolm Butler and Adoree Jackson. So a couple big moves. And,
the Raiders signed John Brown today, so I don't know if you're going to see Golladay end up there. But you also have Juju Smith-Schuster. What's going on there? The Steelers have been radio silent. So interested to see, what kind of – they did sign Ben Roethlisberger back. I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. I know we have a lot of Steelers fans in the group here, so in Lost Tribe. So I'm really interested to see where they go. I don't know if they can go anywhere. And if they don't go, if they don't really start signing people soon, it might be the way that, they might be on their way down this year.
I could also see Kenny Golladay ending up on the Dolphins. The Dolphins were some of the biggest free agency spenders last year. They haven't really done too much. I saw that they got Malcolm Brown off of the Rams, but not really too much coming from Miami yet. So if they could get him and Devontae Parker across from one another for Tua, that could be great, getting some more weapons there. So I'm just excited to see where he ends up. And we know it's not going to be the Lions.
No. And the Saints would have to cut some more salary to be able to sign him. He'd be great for what we need, but I don't see that happening.
Yeah, and so like we said earlier, we saw Russell Wilson was offered for 3 first-round picks, 2 starters, and a third-round pick from the Bears, and they declined that. What is the price on a quarterback like this, or even someone like Deshaun Watson, who's been in trade talks for the past few months?
Yeah, I think the price for Watson's a little cheaper than that. But people always mock the old Ricky Williams trade, every pick this year's draft and next year's number one, but 3 number ones and 2 number threes and 2 players and all that. How could you say no? You haven't surrounded him with any linemen to do anything. They do have a good group of receivers, but I can't imagine saying no. So what would be the price for number ones? Nobody's giving that up for a 32-year-old quarterback.
I just think that maybe doing that kind of trade means that they're really considering a rebuild of some sorts, and it's hard to rebuild after going 12-4 every year. It might be a tough pill to swallow. I heard that Pete Carroll was the one who had the final say on the trade, and he said no. This could be, one of Pete Carroll's last few years in Seattle. He's had a pretty good run, getting them a Super Bowl and another appearance in the Super Bowl where I'm sure we all remember what happened. And so I'm interested to see what happens there. I think Russell Wilson will be a Seahawk at least for this upcoming season, and I'm not sure how much is left on his contract. But Watson was kind of recently involved in some situation online, and the Texans signed Tyrod Taylor to 1 year. So are they preparing for the worst, that Deshaun Watson either sits out the season or they try to trade him?
Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't trade him at this point. Just get what you can. It's going to be a rebuild. You have Tyrod Taylor, or Tyrod Taylor, as a lot of people were saying this year, the rebuild quarterback. Like, you need a rebuild, you sign him. So it would really shock me if they don't. I don't know what teams are out there trying. I wasn't shocked that teams like the Saints and the Bears signed a quarterback. But it doesn't necessarily mean they're out of those conversations, especially the Bears, if they're willing to give up all that. If I'm Houston, I'm like, we'll take 3 number ones and 2 number threes. You can keep the players.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for them. One last question on the NFL before we move on to March Madness and the NBA. Who stands in the Bucs' way right now of repeating for another Super Bowl? It's
the Chiefs, of course. It's if Lamar Jackson can take a step, it might be Baltimore. I don't know. Green Bay really makes me nervous. New Orleans makes me nervous, obviously, with losing Breeze. I don't know if there's anybody in the NFC that's really stepping in. It's not going to be Dallas. Dallas may have an improved year from last year, but they're not going to challenge the Bucs in any way. Maybe the Rams, if they can really pull that together, if they sign Galladay like I've been telling them they should. You have a better chance there. They had one of the top defenses as far as yards allowed last year. You get a quarterback that, let's be real, has the ability to do something more with that team than Jared Goff did. So maybe the Rams are the number one, in the NFC.
Yeah, I would also say the Rams are probably their best threat. Having like a top 2 defense and also getting Matt Stafford. I would also say, in that division, the 49ers, they had a pretty okay year considering they were missing like almost all of their starters on either side of the ball. So if they can get Kittle back healthy, who's arguably the best tight end in football, and they can also get Deebo Samuel back healthy, all 3 of their running backs, get their offensive line back, get their defensive line back. This was a team that was in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. So I definitely think that this could be the return of the 49ers.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Do they stick with Garoppolo, and can he have the year he had 2 years ago? You know what I mean? Which was not like in the top 5 in yards or touchdowns or anything like that. It's just like let's have enough of an offense to compete. You're gonna, he can play the big stats game if he needs to, but he can also hand the ball off to their great running back. So that's their biggest question, and probably their only question after signing those 2 linemen.
Yeah, and with a rushing attack like that, you don't really have to do much. As Jimmy G, just got to make a few throws, which he was unable to do in that Super Bowl. Right. All right, let's move on to everybody's favorite topic of the week, March Madness, as we got some games coming this week. Let's do some Final Four picks. We just had LT Madness where the community selected their Final Four, but let's go through ours. Brian, who you got for the Final Four?
Yeah, so, Gonzaga coming in absolutely undefeated. It's hard to not pick them, especially when you look at their region. They just don't have that much, going against them. Iowa's a team that worries me on that side. Other than that, there's just not a lot that I hate about that. So I like Gonzaga. I like Ohio State to upset Baylor in the South, because I just think that, Baylor not that, I mean, they've only lost 2 games, so we're not talking about a team on a slump by any means, but they were playing a lot better earlier in the season. Ohio State is red hot. They lost to Illinois in overtime in the Big Ten championship, so I like them. I love Illinois. They're actually my championship pick, but and then the East to me is the most interesting because it's the most fraudulent 1 seed in Michigan, the most fraudulent 2 seed in Alabama. So I think there's a lot of opportunities there. I have Florida State and Texas in the regional final, with Texas going forward into the Final Four.
I like the Texas pick. I was pretty close to taking Texas Tech for my pick coming out of the South, but I'm going to be lame. I'm going to go with a few of the 1 seeds here, and I'm going to say Gonzaga, Illinois, Baylor, and Florida State. This is actually what our community ended up going with. So Baylor and Illinois facing off, and then Gonzaga and Florida State. I actually would like Florida State as an upset here. I don't really know that much about college basketball, but I just like the upset, and I would love to see not 2 1 seeds competing in the national championship. That would be a lot of fun.
Well, that's like the struggle every year. It's like, do you want to be wise and try to figure out who that upset team is, or do you want to just lay the first, the 4 1s up there and hope for the best, right? Mm-hmm. A few upsets in the first round, just to throw it out there. I had a lively discussion on the sports chat yesterday on our Discord. I love Winthrop over Villanova. I like UCSB over Creighton. Creighton's just such a weird name for a university, by the way.
And Winthrop's not.
Winthrop is as well. That's a good point. I love Georgetown over Colorado. Now our community was really put their heartstrings on the line for Josh Sunday night when they got Michigan State almost to the Sweet 16. I actually see them losing in the play-in game tomorrow. So if you get points for that, take UCLA. Nice. Sorry, Josh. But yeah, those are some early round upsets. Maybe even throw Rutgers or Virginia Tech in there. Some 10 seeds over the 7s.
Yeah, and I would love to see West Virginia, who is our community favorite, back on Saturday night. I'd love to see them make a run. And for Josh's sake, would also like to see Michigan State go a bit deep. It would be funny if Michigan State, the 11 seed, gets farther than Michigan, the 1 seed. I'm sure that MSU would never let Michigan hear the end of that. Moving on to some NBA. We got a trade today. Trevor Ariza getting traded for like the 4th time this season for Myers Leonard. And Myers Leonard was also traded for a 13-year-old, a 2027 draft pick, which is some 8th grader sitting in history right now. So
maybe watching this podcast right now.
Maybe playing in one of our 13 to 18 tournaments. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. I actually like that for Miami, just bolstering their bench a little bit. Trevor Ariza is a gamer, seen him play his whole career, essentially. He was in New Orleans, in Houston, and, then with the Thunder. So I actually like Miami's been, very much on the upswing. They could sneak into the top 3 spots in the East if the other teams don't watch out. So I like that signing.
And speaking of gamers, I saw that some people were joking on Twitter that the 13-year-old that he just got traded is the ones that he was playing Call of Duty with. But we'll move on from that. Speaking of the Miami Heat, though, they're 9-1 in their last 10. It was like just yesterday that they were 11th in the East, and now they're 4th. They're above the Celtics, above the Pacers, above the Raptors. I know. Do we think that this Heat team is going to make another run? I mean, they've looked almost unstoppable. Jimmy Butler is playing fantastic basketball again. They're really playing well as a team. They're all finally healthy after like the entire month of January. They're all out. So yeah, 4th in the East, 9-1 in their last 10. I mean, are they going to sustain this and make another deep playoff run?
I think they get to 3rd somehow. I really do. I think the 76ers losing Embiid, who knows what happens there. They probably have enough of a cushion on the Heat right now, but I don't know how you bet against them. Everybody last year was like, well, they're not going to win in the first round. They're not going to win in the second round. And they just kept winning because that team is like playoff built. So hopefully they're not, having too much success now and it's going to be detrimental later. But I really like them to get to the 3 seed and really be able to do some damage.
Yeah, they're only 3 games back or 3.5 games back of the Bucks right now. Yep. So it's definitely possible. And even if they are that 4th seed, that could bode well for them, getting a matchup with like whoever's 5th. I think Charlotte's in 5th right now. And we all know like the bottom half of the East is terrible. So, I mean, if they're able to get into the second round, they could definitely give the Sixers a run for their money. Depending on how healthy everybody is, we know it's going to be a crazy playoffs depending on who's healthy if there's any COVID protocol where players have to sit out. So we could see a lot change. I mean, even the Nets, who are like the favorite, like one birthday party and it's all gone. So
well, and the Bucks have not proven that they can win in the playoffs. This Bucks team. So let's not pencil them in necessarily. So
if anybody remembers what happened when they were up 2-0 and they lost 4 games in a row.
That's right.
And the Hornets are actually in 5th place, which is not something I don't think anybody saw coming. Do you think that they can kind of sustain this and make the playoffs? I think at this point, like, they're almost a lock to be at least in the top 10.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as terrible as the bottom of the East playoff bracket is, I think the Hornets stay there. I think a Heat-Hornets first-round matchup would be pretty legit. That would be exciting to watch. You know, the LaMelo Ball going against that Heat team, Tyler Hero and them. So I actually like that possibility. I don't think they go down any. The one team that's been hot at the bottom of the Eastern playoff rankings has been the Bulls, actually. So interested to see. It all comes down to the trade deadline, which I think is like 10 days away or something. So of who's a buyer and who's a seller, and then how that impacts it. I don't think the Hornets are sellers by any means. So I think they sustain 5th, 6th, somewhere up in there, and we'll see how they do.
And the Hornets, the Celtics, Hawks, Knicks, Bulls, they're all like within a game of each other. So we really could see these standings switch. And even right now, the Pacers and the Raptors are both out of the playoff mix. Sad to say. But it really could shake up. I mean, if you finish basically 500, you're almost guaranteed a playoff spot in the East at this point. So if Charlotte can maintain that, and I mean, LaMelo Ball's been playing great. Terry Rozier's been playing great. And speaking of LaMelo Ball, what do we think of the Rookie of the Year rankings right now? It seemed as if at the start, LaMelo was kind of running away with it. But recently, Anthony Edwards has been playing amazing. He had a career-high 34 the other night and has been kind of putting every single person in the league on a poster. So what do we think? Does Edwards have a chance to, he was the number 1 pick and he won Rookie of the Year?
I don't think so with the number of wins that team has. Now, if they got to play the Pelicans every game, they could make the playoffs. But I would say that at this point, it's LaMelo's to lose, especially if the Hornets, get into the playoffs, especially as high as a 5 seed. I think he ends up being your Rookie of the Year, as great as Edwards has been. But, when you win 8 games in the whole season so far, it's just tough.
And speaking of your New Orleans Pelicans, this is going to be a painful segment for Brian, as the Pelicans, who were up 17 when Brian went to bed last night with 5 minutes left in the 4th quarter, somehow lost to the Blazers. Dame had a 50-piece. I mean, half of the 18 for 18 from the free throw line. They were up 3 with 7 seconds left. Ingram misses 2 free throws, and then Lonzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker bobble an inbounds, and then you lose the game. I hate to sound like Skip Bayless, but did the Blazers win this game or did the Pelicans lose it?
Unfortunately, like you said, I went to bed and didn't see the end. When I went to bed, they were 14 up. So my inkling is that we lost it, and, Dame can always go off, and I think he had 50. So just ridiculous. They had an unbelievable first half, almost to the point where the ESPN broadcasters were a little disappointed with, how well the Pelicans were playing. But because it, wasn't that much of a game. But as always, the Blazers are just always there. I think Dame is still mad from when we beat them in the playoffs, swept them about 4 or 5 years ago, and he just takes it out on us every time. And he had 50.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They were just not missing from 3. Covington was hitting 3s. Melo was hitting 3s. Lillard, Trent. I mean, they're getting CJ McCollum back too. I mean, this Blazers team, we can't forget about them. They could definitely be a playoff threat in the Western Conference. They're still hovering around 5th or 6th place right now. And
Nurkic comes back in a week or 10 days. So they'll be fully healthy and ready to roll. So that's a team to be reckoned with for sure.
Definitely to be reckoned with. And we'll go through one more NBA discussion. I see we're talking about some regular season fatigue. The Utah Jazz, the Los Angeles Lakers, both 5-5 over their last 10, and the Clippers are 4-6. Yeah. What do we think's going on?
The Lakers is probably the team in there that doesn't surprise me because they've lost Davis. Mm-hmm. LeBron usually has a little point in the season where he's got to rest up and keep himself healthy for the playoffs. The other two, the Clippers are losing to terrible teams. And it's a little shocking. It really wouldn't surprise me if they're really not that much a part of the Western Conference playoffs, and it comes down to the Jazz and the Lakers. But of course, the Jazz have to prove themselves. You also have the Nuggets. The West is just stacked, so it's ridiculous. But I think this is just temporary, All-Star break kind of fatigue, pre and post All-Star game. I don't know if I end up seeing the Jazz win the 1 seed or not. It just really depends on Anthony Davis and when he comes back.
Yeah, and I mean, the Jazz have been losing to good teams and the Pelicans. They lost to the Lakers, the Heat, the Warriors, and the Sixers. So all very good teams. I think maybe they set the bar almost too high for themselves before the All-Star break. Like, they're kind of crashing back to earth. I mean, they're still number one at 29-10, still a great record, but they're definitely bound to lose a few games here and there. I could definitely see them hitting 50 wins, even in the shortened season. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think, definitely some regular season fatigue coming back from the All-Star break, but I still think that this Jazz team is still top 2, top 3 in the West right now. I can't figure out the Clippers. There's so many good players, so much talent on that team, and yet they somehow find a way to lose to just terrible teams, and they just can't hold the lead to save their life.
I think it's a little bit of voodoo. I mean, the Clippers were never even in playoff discussion, 15, 20 years ago. And even now, even since when they got Chris Paul initially, they would make the playoffs, but never really a threat. And I wonder if that team is just jinxed. I mean, they just can't pull it together. I mean, they have a great roster, but they just, no matter who the coach is, they just can't figure it out.
Yeah, and they used to always be cursed even when they did make the playoffs. I remember they blew a 3-1 lead to the Rockets, which does not get talked about enough, right. And never being able to make it past the second round. And then we all know what happened last year when they were up 15 in games 5, 6, and 7 and couldn't close it out against the Nuggets. So we'll see if that curse continues this year. I mean, you'd think with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George on your team, you should have a pretty good chance, but who knows? And let's move on. We got some questions from the tribe this week over on our Discord as well. We got some pretty good questions. One, especially for me, was who was my favorite non-Patriot of all time? Someone who's never played for the Patriots, never put on the jersey. I would have to go with either Calvin Johnson or Julio Jones. I love watching Julio Jones, even in the Super Bowl that we were playing against the Falcons when he made, I think, probably the best catch I've ever seen in a Super Bowl, despite maybe Edelman's. Julio Jones is just a monster. He's probably my favorite receiver in the NFL. And I know he's getting a lot of discredit because he was injured last year. He still has to be top 3, in my opinion. I see a lot of people putting their top 5s as DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, and then Hopkins, Hill, Adams. We got to stop kidding around, and we got to put some respect on Julio Jones' name.
It's amazing if Julio had a different quarterback, how maybe his career would have a different trajectory. And look, Matt Ryan's not the worst quarterback in the world, but he's an MVP. Sadly enough, yes. He's not that pinpoint accuracy guy all the time. And you say, what's the greatest catch ever in the Super Bowl? And you chose 2 from the same Super Bowl. So one of those isn't even the best catch in that game, which is crazy. But I would have to say not that you asked about my favorite non-Patriot of all time, but I'll say non-Saint of all time. Mm-hmm. And definitely Steve Largent, who was a receiver for the Seattle Seahawks back when I was young, which was a few moons ago.
You're bringing out the history books for that one.
Absolutely. Well, I have to, right? He was a great receiver, just one of these tough guys. Whenever the other team would intercept the ball, they always had their head on a swivel because he would legit hit you and knock you out. But and just a bonus fact, was also a senator from the state of Missouri. So, unbelievable career in retirement as well.
And what you just said is something that I love about Julio Jones. I've seen a lot of clips of when Matt Ryan, like you said, not the king of accuracy, throws a pick, and then Julio just automatically turns into defense mode. Or he saves a pick when a ball gets overthrown, and he just turns into the safety and just absolutely demolishes the DB. I mean, he's huge, some of the best hands and footwork. I mean, he's basically the perfect receiver, in my opinion.
Yeah, he is. It's a travesty that he hasn't had more touchdowns. I mean, he had some years where he had 3 or 4 touchdowns, with 1,600 yards. So definitely a scary presence. Being rooting for a team in the same division. You hate to see it. Love to see him get traded away somewhere in the AFC, perhaps the Patriots. I wouldn't care because he's a great specimen and just an unbelievable player.
Trust me, I remember the season I drafted him in fantasy, and he had 3 touchdowns. I think on the year, and he didn't score one until like week 10. And I was just, oh my God, it was terrible. And then he had the Thanksgiving Day game where he had 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he made up for it then, but just a pain for fantasy.
Exactly.
But we got Calvin Ridley now. So he's definitely a good option too. To wrap things up, we got another question from the community. Just quickly, greatest athlete in each sport. So maybe not the greatest player in each sport, but the greatest athlete. So in terms of either just pure athletic ability, maybe longevity, speed. Let's start with basketball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to lean on my man, Michael Jordan. I know there are definitely probably better athletes today than he was, but I wouldn't tell it to his face because then he's just going to prove you wrong. That's who I'd pick. What about you?
I got to go LeBron. I mean, it's got to be. People say LeBron's the best athlete ever. And I mean, just the fact that he's still playing the way he is at 36. I mean, I don't see Michael Jordan playing at this kind of a standard at 36. And I mean, just, the fact that he's been playing for so long, right out of high school, it was either him or to me, Wilt Chamberlain, just because Wilt Chamberlain was just a different species when he was playing. And in terms of just athlete, he also, by the way, Wilt Chamberlain averaged more than 48 minutes a game for his career. So just putting that in perspective, 48 and a half minutes a game for Wilt Chamberlain, which no one will ever do that ever again. So that's part of the reasoning. Because he never missed a minute. Who are you going to sub him out for? Your dentist on the bench? There's really not much you can do. Football. Either got to stay with the hometown hero, Tom Brady, just because he's still playing like he is at 43, or maybe Jerry Rice, just because so many of his receiving yards are just untouchable.
Yeah, I think Jerry Rice is a good call. I think Barry Sanders is a good call. And, I mean, this is not a player. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's not well liked at all. But as far as physical specimen, Terrell Owens was a physical specimen and just a great player. Not necessarily the fastest guy in the world, but, definitely a great receiver and a great athlete.
Yeah, and definitely have to give an honorable mention to Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders being multi-sport athletes. I mean, it'd be pretty hard to say that Tom Brady's a better athlete than Bo Jackson, but it's arguable. So I'd say any of those. And I do like the Terrell Owens answer. That's something I don't think a lot of people would bring up. Speaking of not super well-liked Hall of Fame caliber talent, I would say Barry Bonds possibly for the MLB, just because nobody ever hit like he did. He got intentionally walked almost 150 times in a season, which just goes to show how scared pitchers were of him. I can't really say with confidence Babe Ruth because I'm not 100 years old. And it's the MLB. I would think maybe Mike Trout, but can you really say a guy who's never even been in the playoffs is the best?
It's true. Yeah, I think Bonds is a tough sell just because of all the the steroid allegations. I think Babe Ruth is a tough sell because John Goodman once played him in a movie, and if John Goodman's playing you in a movie, your athleticism is probably not your thing. But there's a lot of great. There's a Ricky Henderson. There's Bo Jackson, like we talked about. My personal favorite baseball player of all time, Tony Gwynn, was not the greatest athletic specimen, but early in his career, he did steal 20 to 25 bases a year as well as hit 370. So
I would also say one of my hometown heroes from Toronto, definitely not in the greatest athlete of baseball, but I just loved watching Jose Bautista. I mean, the guy could hit 50 home runs in a year and gun you out at first from right field or at third. So not many guys who had an arm like that and a swing like that. And just the bat flip alone against Texas puts him really high in my books.
The bat flip alone, it wasn't just one. Okay, it wasn't just against Texas. That was his big one. But yeah, that's a great one.
I think this comment here was just either regarding Barry Bonds or some other people. Other sports, I mean, Gretzky is kind of the lock for NHL. Tennis, I'd have to go either Federer or maybe even Serena Williams.
Yeah.
Tough,
I think you got to go
say.
Serena. I think you got to go Serena in tennis. I mean, she's played for so long, and when it comes to athleticism, she took that sport to a new space. It's not like in the '80s when you're talking about like McEnroe and Steffi Graf and all, who were good players, but they weren't like that athletic specimen that she and her sister Venus really were.
Yeah, and I have to say, if we're looking at any other sport, Michael Phelps got to be the answer. I mean, guy's got 20 gold medals at the Olympics. Can't really compete with that. Or Usain Bolt. I mean, just in terms of being like the fastest human alive. So
Michael Phelps, just his pre-swim thing when he would slap his arms over his body, that was the most athletic thing I've ever seen in the Olympics, that alone.
Even Michael Phelps eating lunch is a display of athleticism. I hear the guy eats like 20,000 calories or something ridiculous.
That's awesome.
That's going to do it for this week's episode of Pass the Rock. That was a lot of fun. We covered NFL free agency, March Madness, NBA power rankings, and then a little fun questions from the tribe. If you have questions, feel free to either send them to passtherrock@losttribeesports.org or just throw them in our Discord in either the sports channel, or you can DM me, LT Jesse, or Brian, LT Podnuh. I think that's going to do it. We're going to have another crazy week of NFL free agency with more to come. So we'll be back here next Wednesday at 5:30 to lock that up. And in advance of the trade deadline, like you said, only 10 days away, we're going to have some NBA news as well by next week.
Yep, it's going to be great. This is one of the best times of the year because you have the NHL, NBA going towards the playoffs. You have NFL free agency. There's everything going on with March Madness. So pretty exciting to be a sports fan. We're excited to talk to you about all of it. And looking forward to seeing who wins our bracket challenge. If you haven't joined our bracket challenge yet, you can check it out. It's all over our Discord and our social media. Fill out a bracket. You can win a $100 Amazon gift card if you pick the best one. And if you pick a perfect bracket, you get a trip for 2 to New Orleans next year to see the Final Four. So that's pretty exciting. And if it's part of the prize, you get to meet me. Maybe that's great. Maybe you decide I'm going to opt out of that. So your choice.
Your choice. But and also we got a Super Smash Bros. Tournament going on tonight. And a Rocket League Trios tournament this weekend. So if you were interested in either of those things, go sign up on our website. And that's going to do it. We'll be right back here next Wednesday at 5:30 Eastern. We'll see you then.
See ya.